Hey, everybody. Welcome. We're glad to have you here. Some folks are still rolling in. We're going to give them a minute. But if you know me, you know I don't really love the long webinar intros, but like we kind of got to do a little bit of something. So I'm going to start out by just saying, here's what we're talking about today. What really comes down to is we're talking about alignment. We've got three amazing executives that I am so honored to play host to the conversation for today. We've got Anna Baird. She's the CRO at Outreach. Hey, Anna, thanks for being here.
Hello.
We have Christine Rogers, the COO at Aspireship.
Hi.
And thanks for being here. And also Kyle Lacy, the CMO at Lessonly.
Hello.
So to you three, I don't know if you saw when we promoted this, we sent an email that said CRO, CMO, and COO walk into a Zoom. And you got to show up to see what happens. So we're going to see what happens here today. What we're going to do is actually we're going to get a little bit real. We're going to talk about alignment at each of your organizations, things that you've seen at other organizations, some of the real challenges you feel and deal with every day as executives. And we're going to kick it off with kind of the realest of the real stories with Christine, but we're going to get there in just 1 second. Because first, you all know how we start Sales Hacker webinars, right? You're in the live version for a reason. You took an hour of your day to come be with us. Be with us. Talk to us. Get in that chat right now. Introduce yourself. And if the RevOps Truth Bear sent you here, then I'm going to send you, just say RevOps Truth Bear sent me here, and I'll send you something. But don't lie, because I'll know if you're lying. So we got, who we got? Vicky Gurney. Hi, Vicky. Tara Horstmeyer. Hey. Alexis Scott from Aspireship. RevOps Truth Bear sent Joe Golden. I knew there would be someone. If you don't know about the RevOps Truth Bear, you don't know. That's okay. We'll send you a link afterwards, but it's really important. Melissa from Intro Hive, welcome. Welcome, everybody. Feel free to keep the chat going today. You can have side conversations in there if you're in the audience. Please connect with each other on LinkedIn, have some fun. If you have a question for Christine, Anna, or Kyle, please make sure you drop it in the Q&A down at the bottom of your screen, because we're going to be watching that for your questions, and I'll try to make sure we get them answered. Cool? Let's jump into it. So Christine, when we were prepping for this webinar, you told a story that I think resonated, first of all, and it also broke some hearts. So let's why are we talking about alignment? It's because things like this happen.
Yeah, so I was probably about 2 months in to my new role at a previous company as the VP of sales. And we were struggling to hit our number. Just generally, we were trying to figure out, where there were issues, and really we're not in alignment at the executive table between sales and marketing. And I just remember, end of the month in May, Memorial Day. So we had, all of these things going on, and a couple of days to the end of the month, it was not looking good for the forecast. And I found out that the Friday before, marketing went out and had incredible, record MQLs. And so went out and we're celebrating and drinks all around. Kyle's and it was just, my team was devastated. We're all sitting there and we crashed and burned, and I remember just feeling like, yeah, this is so wrong. That we're celebrating over here, the entire group, and just everybody is just pumped up, and then the rest of the org is just, on the sales side, just feeling demolished. And so, that became a big problem that we had to solve really quickly. But I think that articulates the frustration that so many of us have felt on both sides, and how it can be demoralizing for an entire organization.
Yeah, and it happens in every direction too. Kyle, I'll just save you here. It's not always marketing's fault. But so yeah, it's that feeling of just misalignment. That's what it feels like. It feels like not one team. And so what we're going to get into today is some real examples, stories, and real methods of how each of you have addressed this in the past and are doing so now. What I really want to do is normalize the fact that this is a process, that this is something that you always have to be working on, and normalize that like nobody has full alignment. There is no like nirvana that anybody's reached. So if you don't mind, Kyle, I'll go to you first. What I want to ask you is like, how would you sum up the state of alignment at Lessonly right now, if you're being like 80% honest with us?
I'll be like 87% honest.
Okay.
How about that? 87% honest, which does not include MQLs. Is alignment definitely is pretty strong at Leslie, mainly because marketing supports a revenue number. Outbound sales reports into marketing. We are responsible for sourcing a lot of the revenue that AEs close to meet their quota. So what I found early on is that it forces alignment, right? When sales and marketing have to work together because you are under one plan, like marketing gets comped on revenue, sales gets comped on a quota and revenue, right? It forces alignment in a good way. So I'd say on a scale from 1 to 10, Leslie's probably at an 8 or 9. I'm not going to say 7 because that's what everybody says, but 8 or 9 because we're pretty tied in together. As I think the remote world kind of changes that a little bit, but in terms of a goal, we're all marching in the same direction, which is good.
Interesting, cool. And so you're attributing that to a shared a revenue metric, which is we're going to get into exactly how y'all set that up and why later. Anna, can I go to you next? How would you sum up the state of alignment at Outreach?
We're in the search for a CMO, so I'm not going to give it an 8 or a 9 today because we have a lot of work to do. But when you talk about the goals, which I think was what Kyle was hitting on, I think we are getting in a really great place. And we talked about this in our prep calls, but I literally just got off of a call it's our pipeline management meeting that happens every Thursday. And it is marketing, it is my business intelligence team, it is finance, it is sales, it is my SDRs, leadership across, and we're talking about what are the levers we have, how's everything working through the funnel, what are the conversion rates, what do we each need to double down on, what is the team doing, what are the goals for the next quarter. So it is a lot of alignment. We work hard at it, and to Kyle's point, it's hard when you're remote like we are today too, but that team locks and loads. I'm actually super proud of them. So
That's something that came out during our prep conversation as well, that you emphasize that it's really about the process, the actions that you repeat to maintain and keep building alignment, which is, I think, what you're referring to. Part of it is that Thursday meeting. So I'm excited to dig into that too. Christine, last to you. How do you sum up alignment at Aspireship right now?
Well, we're pretty small, so I'm representing kind of a different voice, I think, in this conversation. That might be, what I've seen in the past, but also I think there are probably a lot of people in this call that might not be in larger companies. It might be in smaller companies that are thinking about how to build this and how to do it moving forward. So for me, it's just Alexis and myself, and then our marketing team, that's relatively small as well, but we're all tied together. So we're very tight. We will make this a priority. And I love the conversation that we're going to have because it's about intentional communication and that weekly, daily, don't let things build up cadence of communication, that even when something's just a little bit off, it's about addressing it quickly, that kind of quick corrective action together and high accountability. So I'm just excited for this conversation as well, just to dig in with you two.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all so much for just helping us understand where you're at. This one's for the room, whoever wants to take it. And please, if you can, pull from a real experience. If you can share something, that has happened to you or is happening now, I think we'd appreciate the insight. So my first question is what are the big barriers to alignment? And be specific as you can.
I mean, MQLs probably.
MQLs.
I mean, we could go deep on that. The biggest barrier is misalignment on what metrics actually mean, right? Yeah. You gotta have a service level agreement between sales and marketing on what an MQL actually stands for, and most of the time it's complete BS, right? So you get the demo, you create pipeline, you close revenue. It should be a pretty simple funnel process. I don't care if you're selling into the commercial segment or the enterprise segment. I think most of the time the biggest barrier is a lack of communication and nomenclature.
Yeah, I'd say it's also just there is only one number that matters, and that's revenue. And so we all have to be driving for that number. So again, back to the story that Christine told, you can't be successful at the top and not have success at the bottom and say we're a successful company. It doesn't work that way. There's only one number that makes us successful. And so that's the number that we all have to be, accountable to and attributing to.
And I think I would address it a little differently. So that's like super tactical, because I think that's what we want to get into is the tactical, but just like fear, where we're at the top, or if there is like that heavy feeling, we know that most often that lies in the sales and marketing side. If it's not working, if it's a sales-led organization, if it's not working, there's a lot, heads are going to roll. And so that feeling, that pressure is abundant, I think, in our organizations. And so rather than coming together, sometimes it turns into finger pointing because we're all just trying to, kind of CYA all the time, I think. And so I would take it and say, like, yes, all of those things, and the level of fear in the form of strange and maybe not great leadership.
Yeah, I appreciate that take, because I do think, like Kyle, I agree with you and Anna, that revenue is really the North Star for every part of the go-to-market team. But there is an attitude that has to come with it as well. And in some respects, having the shared metric helps create the culture of, like one team. But I think it's hard sometimes to get to the shared metric without the culture of one team in the first place, because it's a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario, but you're defining your own future to some extent. Does that resonate with you, Kyle?
I mean, yeah, but I think it depends on who we're talking about here. Frontline team members, managers, like they have certain metrics they need to look at because they're part of the funnel, and conversion rates are important. From a leadership perspective, it blows me away when my peers, as a marketer, are not talking about revenue. We work for businesses, and even nonprofits. You got a revenue number, right? You got to raise money. So it's something that marketers, the communication and brand side, we can do what we want to do on the brand side if we're generating revenue. And it's a conversation that I think more marketers have to get over than sales leaders. Even though I'm a firm believer that a CMO should run sales, which I think is a completely different webinar. But we're not going to talk about that right now. I had to throw that in there. But my peers have to get over it. You need to be comped on revenue. You need to be comped on pipe gen. And if you can't do that, you need to set up the systems to do it and take some responsibility.
We've got a couple people. So Ray Reich saying, what do you say? How do you overcome the objection to a marketing team or a CMO? We don't close. My team doesn't close. How can we be held responsible for revenue? Michael Phelan also saying revenue is too far down the line for marketing.
It's like sales saying, how can we not control the experience after you hand off a prospect to us? Right. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you should know, like the people, I'm sorry, and I'm going to say one more thing and I'm going to shut up and let the people smarter on this call actually answer this. But the prospects that are filling out landing pages or raising their hand on calls, they're your children as marketers. They're like my children. And you should shepherd them through the entire process with the sales team. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing marketing correctly. And I will stand by that forever. Okay, I'm done. I'm going to mute myself.
No, but Kyle, I think one of the things I think that gets in the way, and I'm going to take a step back for a second to something you said, Colin, and it's the culture that you're creating. So there's a piece of that's the leaders that you have in play, kind of going, we're all in this together, and we are all going to say, how do we get to revenue in the healthiest, most effective way possible? And to Kyle's point and to Christine's point, there's and all the questions that are in the chat, there's all these phases of the funnel, and it is a funnel. It only goes one direction. That bottom of that funnel is revenue. We talked about that. But having the quality and the accountability for everything that happens in your stage and where it goes next and how do you help them be more successful at that next stage, I think is what Kyle's talking about. So you don't just go, handed it off, it's over the fence, not my problem now. Oh, that wasn't great, too bad. And that's in every team, not marketing just, because if you're in a SaaS tech company with SDRs, it's, those MQLs going into the SDR orgs to get to sales, to then go into the sales team that gets to the, one loss, whatever. But I think it's also everybody gets tied up, and it's the fear I think that Christine hit on how do I say that I won? What metric is going to tell my boss that I won as an organization? And we try to do this slicing and dicing of who gets credit. Who gets credit for what number came out of which piece of this phase? And I think we spend more time figuring out who gets credit than we do on how to make the customer successful. And that is driven not just by sales and marketing, but also finance and other pieces of the organization and CEOs and leaders going, I want to know who got credit. Were they successful? If they're successful, we have big numbers coming out the bottom. And let's hold each other accountable for what programs actually work and what we all get excited about together, what our customers get excited about, because that's the most important thing. If they're getting excited and they're converting at the stages of our funnel, then we're doing something right. And how do we double down on that as a team?
I have nothing to add. That was between the two of you. That was lovely. That was perfect.
I have a feeling a lot of the folks in the audience are sitting here like me, like a bobblehead. Let me ask this, because I think, so what we're talking about is, we started the conversation talking about barriers to alignment, having metrics and maybe culture being a part of it. I was recently in a situation, just to share my truth, where I thought I had aligned with others, and it turned out that I hadn't. And I only found that out after I made some clumsy mistakes. Now, that's probably part of the process. But I'm wondering if you three have any secrets for like gaining awareness of your alignment, or maybe lack thereof. Like, is there a litmus test for this? What do you think, Christine?
Well, I definitely think you're going to step in it if you're not aligned, and that's going to give you some indicators of misalignment. I also think, we were talking a little bit earlier about process, and we were talking about like what definitions and MQLs, like there's ways to build like the process. There's a rinse and repeat, like for those that have done this before, that we can kind of bring in, and also understand that not every single thing is right for every business. So the way we've done it at this other one may not be right, but and we need to look at those things. But I think, it's those handshake moments. Like if we can define those, like being super communicative around saying, okay, this is the definition of an MQL. And then at this point, it becomes an SQL. We're going to handshake there that's what it is. And the exit criteria to move forward and down that funnel, and like being really crisp and concise around that. And I think about it as like friction. And I'm thinking about it internally a lot, like where's the friction, where's the confusion, and looking for those places. And also when it shows up in an email, in a Slack, and you're like, that's confusing. I don't know what he or she means by that. That's confusing. Rather than just letting it go, stopping and saying like, hold on, I'm a little lost there. What do you mean by that? Where are we at? And not being afraid to, as we're building and kind of honing and iterating, to have lots of conversations that are going to be uncomfortable. So that's just like my initial thought on that.
There's always one. That's show business.
Well, I mean, we already spoke to the meeting, the funnel and pipeline meeting. That's where we all step into it all the time. People will call each other out in it. Yep. Like that is where the truth, where we speak truth every week. Like that enterprise pipeline number looks like BS, or your marketing pipeline generated number looks like, is way too overinflated or whatever. Like, and there's positives, like we are very supportive of each other and all that. But that for me, that's it. That meeting once a week, that hour is kind of that's where everybody lays everything on the table.
So you also have, like Anna does, that alignment meeting.
Yeah.
You call it an alignment meeting? What do you call it?
No, funnel and pipeline meeting, and it's run by the Truth Bear, RevOps.
The RevOps Truth Bear. Okay, and so RevOps is in charge of that meeting. Who else attends? You're there, RevOps.
All revenue supporting business line managers. So customer success, services, marketing, sales, by segment.
And it's an hour long.
It's a big team.
Yeah, sounds big. It's an hour long. And what do you look at? Does RevOps have a the same dashboard they always go back to, or same set of reports?
Yeah, you do it by segment: top of funnel, commercial, top of funnel, enterprise, middle of funnel, pipe gen, forecast for the quarter, forecast for the next quarter, forecast for the next 4 quarters, depending on the segment.
Can you share what some, like, coming out of those meetings, what do next steps look like? I'm sure it varies week to week.
There's a bunch of stuff. Sometimes there's ops requests. Sometimes there's like big deal support. Like we'll have 2 or 3 deals that we'll throw out there and say, hey, we need help on this. Like the definition, like inbound demo ratings are going down. Why is that? Is our inbound funnel like collapsing? Like just conversations that are more around just the quality and the quantity of the go-to-market model. And what's important though is that it's both net new and expansion. So you're having the conversation across the entire revenue model, because we all know that at a certain point in a business's growth, net dollar retention expansion is actually more important to the growth of your company, right? So it's important that you have all those voices in the room.
Anna, how similar does that sound to those meetings that you are in?
There is definitely a lot of similarity. And I think the thing that you're hearing is the place for honesty and authenticity and collaboration and healthy tension, right? So one of the things, as Kyle was saying, that one of the things we did that I think actually helped with that is, and I think you hit on it, Kyle, too. I have a innocent bystander who is the one who reports the numbers. So I have BI and RevOps, it's RevOps supporting as well, but my business intelligence team. So there's one single source of truth. Not everybody comes with their truth, right? There's one source of truth, and it is not any of the teams who are getting measured. It is the team externally who is saying, here's what the funnel looks like. Here's what happened. Here's what's bad. Here's what's good. As we look at, so they put the challenges on the table to say, hey, here's what's not looking healthy. Now let's talk about it. The other thing we did though between marketing, sales development, sales is when we started this meeting, we had a collaborative effort to say, what are the activities that these teams should be doing that we think really help drive the funnel? And let's monitor those activities by team. So we all agreed, so we can hold each other accountable too, to say, what do I need you to do that I think is going to be most effective as that lead goes through the funnel? And so each team set up sets of metrics all the way down to like, what should our sales team be doing as we look at the, win rates? What should, marketing be doing? SDR, meeting conversion rates, et cetera, meeting held rates. We went and set those up so that that's what we measured against. They've iterated over time because we'll say, okay, wait, actually, this is more critical now. So you had a shared vision of accountability on where we started to measure. You have an external third party who is helping measure to say, here's what success or not success is looking like right now. And then a forum every week for us to talk about what we're seeing. And again, where do we double down because it's really working really well? And where are we asking ourselves what went wrong? And always taking that outside of the meeting for the teams to go work through, why is that not looking good, and come back with a proposal on how they're going to fix it. So it's mutual accountability, not one person getting, lit a fire under it. Is everybody going, okay, let's collaborate on how we help marketing, or how we help the sales development team, how we help sales. What is it that we could all be doing to lift whatever metric it is?
If I had gotten my ideas about executive alignment only from TV, I would have imagined that those kinds of weekly conversations are at a more grandiose, like 30,000 foot level. Like you're talking about only, should we launch a new product in, APAC? But it sounds like you're really in the weeds. And so outreach is now at a point where there are like almost 800 employees. How many are at Lessonly right now, Kyle?
230.
230? And so Aspireship is smaller. How many at Aspireship?
Or just 10.
10. So here's the question. Is that different for you at Aspireship, Christine, that motion of alignment? Because I would be curious to hear, between 230 and 800, a lot of similarities. How about you?
Well, in my previous company, we had, quite a few employees as well. So I think it's the same. So what it was really present for me, and I want to make sure I point it out, is the two of them are, both Kyle and Anna are strong leaders that are okay with being questioned in front of a group, which that doesn't always happen. So as they have their single source of truth, they're humble enough and willing to come to the table and say like, yeah, maybe we need to do something different. And I think that is super important because it's not in every organization. And there are probably some people that are on this call that don't have that. And what can we do if we don't have that? If there isn't alignment at the top, how can we still show up maybe as a sales manager or, other things like that? Because we may not be able to influence the very top, but we can still make an impact. And so, I just think about that and how when you're creating an organization and you're thinking about what you want for the future is being able to be in a place where you can be questioned and ask, and it's okay. And also, I just was talking to a leader the other day, a VP of marketing, and he said, we just had an exec meeting. We're getting ready to miss for like the third month in a row. And our marketing is like, we're converting, everything's going well. And he said, in that meeting, I said, do you all need more? Like, is it my fault? And I was so proud of him. I was like, okay, yes, step into it and say, like, what can I do better? Even though his team is nailing it, and that shows leadership that's willing to say, like, look, everything looks okay, but any smart person can make numbers look all right. So, like, what do we need to do? Because at the end of the day, he didn't want the kudos if the company wasn't winning. That's strong leadership. And I just don't want to mistake, I don't want anybody to miss that, these two are doing it in big companies and being humble enough to say, I don't have it all figured out, but together we're going to figure it out. And that takes the confidence to be able to be questioned in front of everybody. Because I would imagine that there are moments where everybody's looking at them you're like the senior people in the room and I really don't want to piss you off. And also, it's so important to be able to do that. And I know the two of you wouldn't say that on your own. So I'm just kind of shouting it out that this is abnormal in the very best way. Yeah.
I hope it's less abnormal over time though, right? Because
yeah.
Well, and here's the difference though that I think happens today, where we live right now versus where we lived even 3, 4, 5 years ago, is the amount of data that you have on what's working and what doesn't and how things are flowing through the funnel. People didn't know. They had no idea. They tried stuff, they threw it against the wall, hope there was an outcome that was good. You didn't know till a deal closed whether it did or not, right? And then nobody knew what happened in between to say, so that mid-funnel stuff, that visibility into, okay, it started here, it ended here, what the hell happened? Technology today is changing that drastically for all of us as leaders and companies and teams. And we need to lean into that and say, we know better. We know better because there's data that tells you what's working and what doesn't. And if you just take the time and you look at it and you hold yourself accountable to say, what does the data say? How are our customers reacting in this phase to that, ad piece of information, pitch that we gave, process that we used, you can see so much more. And so you can't ignore it now, and you shouldn't, because leaders need to take every bit of information they have to say, how do I drive different results? How do I change the business outcomes?
Yeah, and Colin, the question that you asked about just phases, when we were 40 people, it was just alignment. That was the point of the meeting. Get in a damn room and talk to each other. And now it's about focus. And I think that shifts pretty significantly as you get more data, as you get, as you get more on your tech stack and you get more things you can look at. Now in those meetings, you're talking 15 managers, directors, and executives sitting in a meeting for an hour. That's a lot of money in a meeting, right? Number one, from a headcount perspective. And then you're looking at data, you've got to be so focused. And what's so important is that one source of truth, which you guys do at Outreach, which is awesome. I didn't even think to frame it that way, but that's what the truth bear is, the RevOps, where there is one source of truth, right? So that you have the focus. And that's the only way this thing scales, honestly, is if you can focus on specific things instead of everything.
So Anna, you brought up technology. And one of the questions this is something that I actually wanted to ask about, because it is so true. There was that quote from, I think it was the CEO of Macy's. I might be misattributing that, but someone at some point said something like, I know half of my marketing budget is wasted. I just don't know which half. Some of us have heard that before. It's kind of a funny little anecdote. I don't know if that's true anymore. If you have that problem, it could just be that you're not tooled up, maybe. Or maybe you're not experimenting enough. I don't know. We can get into that debate. Maybe it's a different webinar. But here's my question. What technologies do you feel, maybe name specific platforms or not, up to you, have been important or key to your ability to generate alignment in your organizations?
I mean, Salesforce. So, I mean, number one, you got to be able to use it. The second one is there's a newer company out of the High Alpha portfolio called Canopy, which we use Canopy throughout the entire funnel and pipeline meeting. Like that's our source of truth is Canopy.
And that's what like a BI.
Yeah, it's like visualization of Salesforce data and BI tool.
What about you, Christine? Any technologies that have been key to your ability to generate alignment, or do you attribute the ability to create alignment to technologies at all? Maybe.
I love that it's an inform, and I think it's really important, like to have the single source of truth, like we were talking about. I also am a firm believer that you better be able to do your job and understand the funnel without it. So, like, as far as you need to understand the nitty gritty of the entire health and quality and all of it of the funnel. Despite it. So I love the idea and that we have more technology to give us the inform. But I think that a lot of people, I have seen quite a few people in that we're always talking to sales leaders, and you can tell the people that actually know their business, really know the ins and outs, and talking like with these two about how the nitty gritty, they are in there understanding each little nuance as it's going through the funnel. And I think a lot of people talk very high level and are very strategic around it and don't know how to, if it's not making sense. Like, for instance, at that company I told you the story of the beginning, we had the thickest tech stack I've ever seen in the world. We had so many things. And I'm like, right, but we're not hitting. So like all of these things don't matter if we're still not getting there. And we're just spending a lot. And you know what? You know how many awards we were winning? Marketing awards. It was the dumbest thing I had ever seen. I couldn't believe, Kyle, it's true. I mean, it's true.
Oh, I know it's true. That's why
and I'm like, I think we're winning awards because we're just paying for this technology. Like, I don't know what's happening here, but what I do know is at the end of the day, if you don't know how to run those numbers and you can't tell the health of your funnel with exporting stuff from Salesforce, running it down and going, this actually makes sense, I think it's a miss. I think you have to know your business really, really well, and the technology can support it.
What about you, Anna? Any key tech?
Well, yeah, I work at a company that I think is pretty key. But it's funny because it is top, mid, bottom of funnel, right? And so you have marketing automation at top, some of the MQLs leads coming in. You have outreach in the middle that is helping, obviously, all the activities say, how are we engaging with customers and what is that saying? And the bottom is where it's recorded in CRM, just, here's the outcome. So you're getting that now full spectrum and can watch deals all the way through the funnel. And to me, that's all we use. I don't need anything else. I mean, there's stuff that feeds in to give you contact information, that kind of thing, but you've got the whole funnel covered right there. So that's all you need.
Learn more at outreach.io. How'd you like that setup?
Appreciate that.
Let's talk about. I want to pivot back to something that came up a little while ago. It was Ray Reich. Actually, I can't find your comment now, Ray. But he brought up something in the chat about tone setting among top level executives in the C-suite. That it's, and actually somebody else asked, how can I help my executives like generate more alignment? Like, how do I feedback up? So maybe we look at this from both angles, but I guess my question is, at a personal level, aside from these weekly cadence meetings where we're getting into reports and like looking at data to generate alignment and improving ops processes and all of those things, with personal relationships within the C-suite, like how do you think about alignment there, and how do you improve those relationships so that silos don't occur?
Christine, you go.
You lean forward.
Well, so I'm a big believer in so I'm going to take a step back and say I think it's really important to get to know who you're doing this dance with all the time. And I mean, not just in business, but like getting to know people that you're going to be working with this much. And I am a big believer in, when you're in the trenches, You need to like be able to look at someone and go like, I know that we are here together and we're doing this together. And a lot of that investment comes in just spending time actually investing in the relationship between the two of you. So if you I think that that's one of the, and I'm a big believer in fun. So having fun with someone, just generating other conversation that's not just business focused, so that I am actually invested in who you are as a person. It's a lot harder for me to then go at you, at the boardroom table when we are invested together and really seeing that what we're doing is meaningfully impacting each other, the business and our people, and of course our market and the customers. So I think that that's probably one of the most important things that I've learned over the last few years is making those personal investments to get to know each other.
Mm.
I think the one thing that I think that spans across not just C-level, that's everybody in a company. I've told my teams a ton. I was like, you need to go talk to your business partners and go have a coffee or go spend some time, a Zoom glass of wine, whatever it is today, because it is so critical to build some sort of rapport and relationship and empathy on what their challenges are, what they're dealing with. You can share yours, what you're dealing with. So when you come to the table then to have a difficult discussion, you're not having it on no relationship. You try to have a difficult discussion with no relationship. I would say it's like a bank. You got to deposit in. So when you need to withdraw, you're not, at the bottom of the barrel with, a concrete floor. You've got to start with something that you've invested so that when you withdraw and want to go have a conversation where, okay, this isn't working and you and I need to talk about this, so much easier. Like 1,000% easier. A prime example, I'm literally moving tomorrow. I live in California to Seattle. We've hired a chief people officer, a new CFO. I'm going up there because I want to make sure we have some time to get alignment in person. They're actually going to the office where they have been since they started. They've all been there less than a year. And we've been doing this, for that year. I'm going to go up there so that we spend some time together for exactly that reason, Christine. But it's at every level, not just the C-suite.
Agree.
I agree with all that. The only other thing I would add is there's a book called Nonviolent Communication that I highly recommend. It's by Marshall Rosenberg, and really, for me, it's mostly just about how to not be reactive and to communicate with collaboration, empathy, compassion, and if you've built relationships and you've figured out a way to not violently communicate with each other, which is usually pointing fingers, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier for you to have difficult conversations. And you need to have that at the rate that a lot of companies grow, especially in venture-backed software.
Doug from WebPT is also recommending Radical Candor. Said he read it with
Right.
leadership.
Awesome.
That's
awesome. Another awesome book.
I'll throw out a third one, Culture Code. If you haven't read that one, Kyle, you might enjoy that one too. So we're talking a lot about internally, like with our teams, how these different motions of alignment can make our lives easier. Is there a view of alignment where we look at benefits to our customers or prospects? Like, how does that shake out? How would I feel it as a customer if the vendor partner that I'm working with is really well aligned?
I mean, it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
The experience is enjoyable. I mean, I don't know how you measure that really, but it's, if marketing and sales aren't aligned, the handoffs are usually terrible. If CX and sales aren't aligned, the handoffs are usually terrible. Especially if you're going into you have a pilot leading into an enterprise deal, all that stuff you have to have alignment or it's just going to be rocky. And we've all been through software sales experiences where it's rocky and it is not fun. It is not fun at all. So it's the same thing on consumer marketing, right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be easy to do business with you in general. So that's what alignment does, in my opinion.
I think it also is one voice. The company has one voice to the customer, not 10 different voices from 10 different parts of the funnel, different teams, different departments. I mean, it's hard to do. This is not an easy thing to do, but from the thought leadership all the way down to the messaging that's coming from the sales team, and obviously all the marketing that happens across the funnel, it's one voice, one message, so you don't confuse them, because that's one of the biggest, the unpleasant experience comes from dropping the ball or confusing your customer. And I think Kyle was hitting on the drop in the ball part, and I think the other component to that is confusing the customer with mixed messaging on who you are as a company and what your outcomes, what challenges you solve for them, and what you're going to be as you continue to support them as a partner.
I think just to add one little piece to that, so I always think about friction again. Where are the places where there's friction and it is confusing, or expectations are not being met. And I love the way one of my former colleagues, she called it customer delight rather than kind of expectations or meeting expectations. When you're delighted through the process, because every time it's just a little bit better than what you thought, it carries you forward in a really positive, and that momentum is felt kind of shifted. And I think it's just a really powerful thing. When I love the one voice comment, because I think that's where so many of us get off. It's like, oh, well, I know we said that, or, somebody comes in on a white paper and they're like, yeah, I just thought it was, something to help me, instead of like, sticky notes everywhere. And you're like, wait, what? This is not the CRM. It's not really sticky notes. It's like all the things that are confusing about the experience, and really kind of, thinking about that, looking for the places where there's friction, because, when the excitement's high and everything's going well, that's usually where the dollar signs are, like when excitement's high, and then and so how can we continue to delight along the way and not just meet expectations? I like the thought of like, how can I consistently go a little bit further and make people just like, when you're delighted, you talk about it. If someone's just meeting expectations, you don't. You expect that your food's going to come out right. If it comes out and it's got a bunch of pizzazz along with it, you're probably telling 3 people. So I don't know. That's kind of how I think about it. Mitigate, like lose the friction and create delight.
That's a great way. One of the things we did, and it's a process, but took a look at everything that touched the customer from the first time we talked to them, the decks, and started with even just the decks we were using, all the way across the customer journey. So some of the messaging from marketing, first deck that they saw, all the way through customer success, what were our QBRs looking like, and said, is that aligned? Do we have our messaging aligned across? What is the customer experience if you had this communication to you? So I don't know if anybody's done customer journey mapping, but super fun exercise. And we had done it to say, okay, we took a real customer and said, for each stage of their journey, what did we think happened to them? And from our perspective. And then we had to go back and said, what do you think the customer's experience was? What we thought should have happened, and then what was the customer's experience? And you had to put yourselves in their shoes. And then we had obviously the reality. And it's a great way to take a step back and saying, am I missing friction points? Am I thinking about opportunities for moments of delight? To your point, Christine, I think it was a phenomenal highlight.
I love that, because the journey mapping is wonderful. Like and you can do that at any time. I mean, I just did it with my team. Like, hey, where are those? We have the sticky notes, different colors. We're all running the line, and say, it's not that hard to do. It's an exercise that any one of us at any level can do, and say, like, where is the problem? And I remember the first time we did it, we were having some issues right up front with implementation. And after doing it, we realized the biggest issue that the customer was dealing with was getting their data inside of the software. And so we were having them do it. And it was just causing all kinds of consternation. It's like, what if we put a person there just to grab, we just do it for them. All of a sudden, the implementation we were having a cluster right at the beginning. It just shifted, and it just smoothed that right over with one person owning that specific piece. And it was like nobody had seen that until we actually did that exercise, which was so helpful.
Who owns that initiative at Outreach, Anna, of like the customer journey audit? Who led that?
We did it. Well, so we did it as an executive team. So my go-to-market leadership team, we did it together. But in success with Mike, we're like definitely talking through that, and my sales leadership. So it's success and sales. We're like, what is the customer experience? It's because we're evolving so much. We're creating new teams. We're doing all sorts of things. It is an exercise you have to redo. So it's actually probably time for us to do another redo of our journey mapping. We just created a couple new teams. So good reminder for me on this call. As a CRO, I think it's partially my job. So
the part of the reason I asked is because you mentioned having the like innocent bystander, I think is the phrase you used, of business intelligence in your weekly cadence. Kyle, you mentioned that revenue operations leads your weekly alignment cadence. So I'm kind of curious, do the 3 of you think that revenue operations, or some, whether you call it that or not, some centralized operations team is a key ingredient to alignment? Kyle's nodding.
On the
Yes.
journey mapping, or just in total?
Alignment in general. I mean, journey mapping sounds like it could be a project that falls under that team, but maybe not.
Well, yeah.
That sort of
Go
single
ahead.
source of truth for me. I'm a big proponent of single source of truth, and those sit in. They have to sit. You can't have it all over the place. It is BI and RevOps are those are the people. The data is going in. BI owns how the data and reports are coming out. RevOps is helping with some of this system stuff, and the two of them are saying, "Yep, here's what the data says," and then we're all then addressing the data that they're bringing to the table on the good, the bad. Sorry, Kyle, what were you going to say?
No. So one source of truth. We actually at Leslie we have a team that's the revenue experience team, and that includes product marketing, sales enablement, solutions consulting, people that help with pilots, ops, RevOps, kind of shared between that team and finance. But I could see a point where all that lives in one team that supports all go to market, all revenue owning teams. So you have enablement, product marketing, ops, all in the same org. And that's kind of the direction that we've moved at Leslie. It's been very helpful because that's the central point for everyone.
Mm-hmm. And I love, in your organizations, is that under you, Anna, or is that under, I know sometimes it's under finance or, how does that roll up?
RevOps is all under me. BI is under finance, but to have such a partnership, it doesn't even matter to me. I don't care where it sits. What I care is what is the data pull. So the source of data has to be all agreed. The definition of data has to all be agreed. So we know what we're pulling and reporting on. You have to start there, right? So your data has to be good. You have to be able to name it, identify it, and know what it means when you pull it. And then that team providing that across is the most critical first step from my view. And BI and RevOps partner together to how we're visualizing is really where that comes out.
That's great. I think that's a great point too, is that they care less about control of it and more about, is it accurate? Is it right? It doesn't, and I think sometimes that's where people start to pull and tug and say like, I want control of this. If it rolls up into me, then I can make sure it's right, rather than saying like, this is where it can live. And we're going to all, as long as we're all agreed on that, I think that's really important. I mean, we're just a baby company, but you bet your ass, like real quickly, I'll be having somebody that is in that seat, because I think it is a really important piece to have that and to support, not to be governance and weird, but to be the assistant and guide to kind of lead the way, right? We're giving you a lot of, I hope there's lots of people that are thinking about how they can do this in their organizations. And maybe if it's not as giant, again, we want to make sure that we think about that moving forward, because I do think that's like a critical piece of the organization.
As I think back, like Kyle did on our earlier years, because I've been here for 3 years now, we were not this big, obviously, when I started. But one of the things we did, and there were some tough meetings. We got BI and engineering, and people in the room was like, what is the definition of this data? Who owns the source of truth? Is that data all accurate? Do we need to do cleanup? Is there something wrong with the data? Is there a different way we'd want to manifest it? So therefore we have to do some work to make it, give us the information we were looking for. And so we spent some time really setting that baseline. And I think, Christine, your point, such a great point, because a lot of the times the fight is around whose data is accurate. And to the point we talked about earlier in the call, people bring their own data to the table. You can slice that and dice that and make yourself look any way you want. But if to have somebody else own it, you have to all have agreed what that data definition is, where it's coming from, what the source is, so that also everybody that has confidence and trust when it's coming out, we're just visualizing it. We all know where it came from. And if there's issues with it, we all know that too. We know what the risks are. So that alignment also is so critical.
This is amazing. I'm sitting here, my mind is opening up. Just want to note, we have 6 minutes left. So attendees, if you have questions, drop them in now. We might be able to still get to them. If you don't have questions, that's okay. Just go to LinkedIn and drop the most mind-blowing nugget of knowledge that you got today and use the hashtag RevOpsTruth, and I'll send you a hoodie. And maybe something else.
Can we get a hoodie?
I got one.
Of course.
I would love a hoodie.
Hoodie game.
So you just started
if I had, so 80% of Sales Hackers marketing budget just goes to hoodies. You heard it here first. That's how we do it.
Same with Leslie. That's funny.
So I'm looking. It doesn't look like any new questions rolling in. Doug, if you want a T-shirt instead, because it's 91 degrees in Phoenix, I'll send you something else. Maybe one of those like squirt bottles with the fan on it.
I need those too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I'm not seeing any new questions coming in, but the attendees today, great discussions and points coming from y'all. Thank you so much for like being present and active and giving us your time today. Christine, Anna, and Kyle, really, really appreciate you bringing some real stories and experience to this. I know I learned a lot, and I'm going to watch this recording this weekend and like reabsorb a lot of it because I think there's some good nuggets in here that I probably missed. So thanks, everybody. I hope everybody has a wonderful April Fool's Day. Don't get pranked too hard, and I'll see you around.